No matter how many times experts tried to get people to pay attention to climate change, in addition, a string of storms, tornadoes, floods, and droughts wreaked havoc on the Earth by 2019. When several cities were destroyed, international leaders, led by the United States, joined together and discovered a means to stop the storms using a network of tens of thousands of satellites. Each is deploying defenses intended to affect weather's fundamental components. Chief architect Jake created this network of satellites, which was referred to as Dutch Boy. Although it was currently a US-owned business, the Dutch Boy would be passed to an international council after 3 years. One day, Jake receives a summons to appear before a U.S. Senate subcommittee for disciplinary action after punching a government inspector and posting Dutch Boy online without permission. Jake ignores the texts from his brother Max telling him to stop and responds to their criticism with sass. According to Jake, the officer's refusal to quit handling machine parts that nearly killed him is why he attacked the man. And that in order to prevent a string of storms that would have killed thousands of people, he turned on the Dutch Boy. The Senate doesn't care. All they want is that Jake obeys. In order to keep an eye on things, they decide to hire new employees, and Jake will have to let go of some of the existing team members. Jake runs into Max, who reports to the U.S. Secretary of State. After the meeting, Max has been selected to oversee Dutch Boy. And since he believes it will be best for the project, he has chosen to fire Jake. After learning that his brother can harm his family, Jake is horrified and stops talking to him. 3 years later, a UN team stationed in Afghanistan receives some strange readings on its scanners and visits a nearby village to investigate. To their surprise, they find that everything is frozen and that everyone has died. The US President Palma and his team receive a recording of this discovery and concur that it must remain a secret for the time being. There is proof that Dutch Boy is to blame, but officials are reluctant to halt the investigation since the press will seize the opportunity. Although Max despises his brother, Secretary of State Deckham advises him to pick Jake for the job because Jake is the one who understands the station the best. Max suggests sending someone to investigate the malfunction. The satellite responsive for Afghanistan returns to the Dutch Boy, where it is checked on. When engineer Habib discovers a peculiar date on the device's hard drive, he decides to create a copy and hide it in his locker. After that, he attempts to return to work, but when he enters an empty space, suddenly, the glass shatters and the doors lock themselves around him. Habib is launched into space and passes away immediately. The following day, Max travels to Florida to see Jake, who has been living there since his divorce and sees his daughter Hannah twice a month. Jake tries to shoo Max away since he doesn't want to see him. But, Max asks him to rejoin the project and informs him about Afghanistan and the aviation crash. Max reconsiders as Jake declines him by pointing him that his creation is killing others. Long logs onto the system later at the Pacific Climate Council's Hong Kong offices and discovers an oddity regarding the incident in Afghanistan. He calls Max to warn him, but the phone rings into voicemail. He then visits the market to get some goods while seeing how hot it is. A cat is attempting to stay inside the store refrigerator since the heat is so intense. Moreover, when Long unintentionally spills his eggs, they fry on the ground. Long notices that the streets are being destroyed by firewhirls as the ground begins to shake suddenly. He drives away in his automobile right away. Drove around all the frantic individuals and the structures that were constantly falling down. Long doesn't stop until he gets to a road outside the city and the temperature starts to fall, indicating that he is no longer in sight. He turns around, though, and sees Hong Kong in ruins. Hannah sobs when Jake leaves because she fears he won't come back and because he's never been someone she could depend on. But Jake says he'll return. Soon after, Jake boards a shuttle and takes off towards the Dutch Boy. Jake says he'll return. Soon after, Jake boards a shuttle and takes off towards the Dutch Boy. Returning to a sense of home in space, Commander Fassbinder, the station's head scientist, welcomes him and introduces him to her core group. This includes system analyst Duncan and security officer Doucet. They believe the Hong Kong tragedy to have been a gas explosion because that is what the news reported. Jake is confident that the same thing that froze the village also caused it. Max is spending time with his love Sarah, a member of the President's Secret Service, in the meantime on Earth. A call from Long interrupts them and tells Max about the heat he felt prior to the incident. That is, a gas pipe was not present. To support his theory, he has attempted to inquire about the Dutch Boy. Then Max finds that his account has also been disabled after learning about it. A technical flaw that is being concealed by a government official could lead to a geostorm. which involves global catastrophic weather disasters occurring simultaneously. After hanging up, Max finds that Sarah has been summoned into work because the president has decided to have a last-minute news briefing, which seems somewhat abrupt. Max makes a commitment to look into the situation. When the power goes out, Long keeps attempting to log in at the office. He rushes to hide after hearing sounds coming from the hallway, which involves global catastrophic weather disasters occurring simultaneously. After hanging up, Max finds that Sarah has been summoned into work because the president has decided to have a last-minute news briefing, which seems somewhat abrupt. Max makes a commitment to look into the situation. When the power goes out, Long keeps attempting to log in at the office. He rushes to hide after hearing sounds coming from the hallway. He requests that she look into the account's blocking. Dana says that someone programmed this to appear as though it were a bug, however, it was undoubtedly deliberate. Jake and Max have a video meeting in the Dutch Boy, who alerts him to the possibility of criminal activity behind the incidents. Max gives Jake the go-ahead to retrieve the Hong Kong satellite since he is relieved to learn this because he knew the Dutch Boy had been constructed successfully. Jake thinks he can do everything without asking Max's permission, which leads to a fight. Also, Max reminds him that once their parents passed away, he had to constantly fix Jake's careless blunders. If Jake doesn't act properly, he's sick of looking out for his brother, he'll get fired once again. Upon arrival at the station, the Hong Kong satellite unexpectedly, as soon as the robot arm grabs it, it starts to shake erratically and damage the hangar before dropping the satellite. The team must retrieve the few remaining components after the satellite is completely destroyed during the crash. Sadly, the incident led to an electrical short that destroyed all of the drives. Jake therefore believes that there is no evidence of corruption to consider, but Doucette tells him that after seeing the footage of Habib's death, he has learned the following: one of the drives in the panel that detonated became lodged in the communication tower. In order to collect the panel, Jake and Fassbinder embark on a spacewalk. Suddenly, though, Jake's suit starts acting up, and he loses control of his movements. He drops the panel as a result of the shaking and hits the station. He manages to grasp onto a wire while ejecting his jetpack in order to keep from floating away. Later, as Fassbinder takes him back inside, Jake confesses to having taken the drive from the panel before letting go. When the group visits them, because Jake is certain that one of them ruined his suit, he chooses not to tell them about the drive. After that, he and Fassbinder examine the drive and find no indications of corruption. It proves someone has been deliberately causing the alleged mishaps. Jake tries to figure out the password for this software, but he is locked out. While waiting, Long agrees to meet Max and Sarah in a cafe after arriving in Washington, D.C. But as Long prepares to cross the street, he receives a serious injury after being forced in front of a moving vehicle. Sarah tries to pursue the enigmatic man after he fled in his own car. She is not quick enough, though. Before Long passes away, Max hears him say the word, Zeus, as he hurries to his side. A short while later, Max receives a call from Jake, who claims it is an emergency, and answers it, prior to telling Max the entire account of the day they went fishing with their father. Jake merely wants to apologize for his behavior and remind Max that there is an unwritten code between brothers. When Max learns of his plans, he goes to meet Dana and plays a video of Jake's anecdote for her. Dana questions how it's an emergency, and Max responds that they never went fishing when they were kids. Jake is attempting to send a message in code because he believes he is being watched. Dana assembles clips from the video to form the actual message after Max teaches her the code they learned as children. Trust no one. There is proof of sabotage at the highest level of government. Max then requests that Dana research Project Zeus. Moreover, Dana discovers a double encrypted file on an uncrackable White House security network. To overcome that, she needs the proper qualifications. Later, when Sarah goes back home, she discovers evidence of a break-in. When she pulls her gun, she finds Max and Dana there, who do not want others to be aware of their presence. Sarah is asked for her credentials by Max in order to steal the data. Sarah initially declines because it would violate her oath. Max, however, convinces her otherwise by pointing out that if he is asking for something so seriously, it must be very important. Jake and Fassbinder review the surveillance cameras at the Dutch Boy and find that Habib hid something in his locker. Yet he kept something secret in his locker. Nevertheless, they discover the locker empty when they check out. They are confronted by Doucette, who is brandishing a gun, but he doesn't instantly kill them. Jake is aware that Doucette shares Jake's desire to identify the killer of Habib. Doucet admits that Habib's belongings are in a different locker after reassuring everyone that they are all on the same team. He claimed that he saw the security cameras as well but kept quiet since he believed the intruder would come to destroy the stuff and make their identity known. The trio opens the appropriate locker and discovers the drive's copy. This suggests a virus has been installed on the station's computer system. In the interim, Sarah provides Dana with her login details, enabling her to locate the Project Zeus files. She discovers several simulations that culminate in geostorms. Max understands that someone utilized those simulations to really create the storms. After that, Max calls Jake on video to tell him that someone is using the Dutch boy as a weapon to attack particular cities. Jake affirms that they are using the virus to do it. He wants to temporarily turn off the Dutch boy so that a reboot will remove the malware. Max approves of it. Nevertheless, there is a small issue. The president is the only one with the kill codes, and Jake has no faith in Palma. Their accounts can only be blocked by someone in authority, and it's no accident that the US must turn over management of Dutch Boy to the International Council in 3 weeks. While he looks for a way to get the kill codes, Max asks Jake to keep a watch on the satellites. Many hours later, to attend a national convention, President Palma is traveling to Orlando. Sarah is persuaded by Max to assist him in stealing the codes after he approaches her covertly and persuades her that the conspiracy is real. Max tells his superiors he's traveling to Florida to visit his father in order to board the plane with them. That instant, warning messages stating 200 satellites are malfunctioning are sent to the Dutch boy. Almost all of them are in danger. The effects are soon evident on Earth. Tokyo begins to experience severe hailstorms, when a cold front off the coast destroys half of Rio de Janeiro. He is still unable to turn off the channel. Jake makes the decision to deploy the backup satellites in place of the ones wreaking havoc throughout the globe. Before the rest of the city collapses, they are able to replace the one in Rio de Janeiro. Nevertheless, another signal states that a geostorm is beginning at that precise moment, on Earth. Max sees the catastrophic news and receives the alert on his table as well. Realizing that Florida would be hit by the storm next, Deckham approaches him and demands to know the truth after stating that he is aware that Max's father is deceased. The president is behind an approaching geostorm, Max informs him. The president himself is the code, thus Deckham has bad news. They can't acquire the codes from Palma. His fingerprints and eyes are required to trigger the shutdown. They are left with no option but to attempt to reason with him, at this time. When the Dutch boy team learns it started the self-destruct sequence on its own, they are astonished. They attempt to override the command but the system locks them out. Jake understands Duncan is the only person who has the expertise to carry out this. As each section of the station explodes one at a time, Jake orders the team to leave before approaching Duncan. Jake discovers him still on the computer and starts to beat him up. However, Duncan has a revolver stashed beneath his desk and uses it to disarm Jake. Duncan then acknowledges that he did introduce the virus into the system and that he accepted the fraudulent payment from the government because his income as a software engineer is absurd. He also acknowledges that he would like to see the planet burn. Jake rushes to disarm Duncan so he can attack him once more. But Duncan grabs the gun and during the struggle, he unintentionally fires at a window. Duncan is shot into space as Jake quickly enters another room and shuts the door. Back in Florida, Max is led into a separate room by Deckham, who claims they will speak to the president there. It's all a trap. Though, Deckham turns out to be the real terrible person, and the president is completely ignorant. He tries to shoot Max because he is too knowledgeable. By a back door, Max is able to flee and encounters Sarah, letting her know that everyone will be affected by a storm, which means Deckham will eliminate all of the presidential candidates at once. He thought that the brothers' incessant arguing would prevent them from realizing the truth, so he handed Max management of the Dutch boy and instructed him to purposefully hire Jake. The only option left to them is to kidnap the president. So Max gets a car ready while Sarah pretends to have seen someone openly preparing to shoot Palma. The president is being escorted by Sarah and another bodyguard as emergency procedures are put in place. Nevertheless, as soon as they are left alone in a hallway, Sarah kills the bodyguard and forces Palma to accompany her to a self-driving car Max stole. The geostorm strikes Earth as everyone in the station leaves. There are tornadoes in Mumbai. Moscow is hit by a severe heatwave, and Dubai is hit by a megatsunami before the stadium is demolished. Max and Sarah are able to rescue the president from Florida during a lightning storm. Deckham also manages to flee in time, sending men in search of Palma. Who is receiving the complete truth about Max? To avoid the lightning, Sarah must drive erratically. The shot coming from Deckham's forces, and the ruined roads, not much time is left to shoot at the majority of the males. Sarah chooses to drive backward before ramming their cars with her own. When struck by lightning, the automobile rolls over and explodes. Deckham hands his bodyguard a rocket launcher so they can fire at the president's automobile from a distance. The automobile blows up when the missile reaches its objective. But, Sarah captures Deckham as she abruptly appears from behind. To relocate the vehicle and set up the trap for Deckham, she used the self-driving system. The cops are currently en route to take him into custody. Deckham tries to convince Palma that his actions weren't genocide because they were meant to exterminate their enemy, since he created such a potent gadget in the first place. He believes Jake would concur that science is merely pretending. Max punches Deckham after hearing his sibling being disparaged. The news starts out by reporting on all the natural calamities and the station's lack of responsiveness because the reboot needs to be done manually. Fassbinder attempts to stay as well, but Jake dismisses her. Upon being transported to the Kennedy Space Center, Palma triggers the kill codes right away. The brothers must say goodbye in tears because the self-destruct procedure cannot be stopped. After all these years, they get back together, and Max makes a commitment to look after Hannah. Jake rushes to don his astronaut suit and reaches for the computer as the station proceeds to self-destruct. However, his code is not accepted by the door. Thankfully, Fassbinder did stay behind and she knows a different method to depart, which surprises him. When they work together to manually reset the computer, Fassbinder removes viruses and Jake turns off the satellites, putting an end to the geostorm. As that happens, the room blows up, leaving Jake and Fassbinder to drift outdoors. Jake witnesses the demise of his creation and finds a satellite, so they allowed the explosion wave to carry them in that direction. The two successfully enter. NASA loses communication with the station when it has finished destroying itself, hence, they are unable to command the satellite to return it. A light making a mayday pattern comes on the screen out of nowhere. It turns out that the explosion pushed the satellite away, that is, Jack and Fassbinder are discovered. A few hours later, one of the evacuation shuttles returns to take them up. As everyone has safely returned to Earth, Max and Jake reconcile and have their first hug in years. Jake, Max, and Hannah go fishing 6 months later and find it uninteresting, finally realizing why their father never went with them in the first place. Jake vows he'll be returning but wants to spend one final happy moment with his family before heading back to space in a week to build a new station. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more.